today we are going to discuss the cranial foramina and all the structures that pass through them. So now let's begin. If this should be, let's draw the make it bigger so you can understand it. If this should be the skull, we have three fossae. Here you have this is a part of the sella turcica. This region is the hypophyseal fossa, but we are not discussing that now. We'll discuss that in the other lecture. So from here you have the frontal bone, and you have a projection running posteriorly, and that projection is here, and it's called the frontal crest. This projection is called the frontal crest. Then posterior to it, we're going to find a plate-like structure, and this plate-like structure is called the cubiform plate, the cubiform plate of the ethmoidal bone. So in the cubiform plate, you're going to find a posterior projection also. And this posterior projection, lateral to it, you're going to find different foramina. There are different foramina, which we will discuss soon. Then from this part of the sphenoid bone, this region you're seeing is the hypophyseal fossa. From this part now we have this one. So this is the basic makeup of the base of the skull. This I drew now is, let's assume now, this is my anterior view. Let's assume you're seeing my skull. This is the anterior view of my skull. And in my skull, you have this part housing the brain, called the Neurocranium. And this part housing other organs, called the viscerocranium. So what I drew now is the base of the Neurocranium, like from here now, because this is the extent. This is the extent of the viscerocranium. This is the extent of the neurocranium. So this part now is the neurocranium. So when you cut off half of it, you divide it, half of it, and you remove the upper part, which is the roof. Then you find an opening inside, a cavity inside. Then when you have seen that cavity, you turn it this way towards you. You turn the cavity, it was lying this way, and you are looking at it. Then you turn it this way. You turn it from this way to this way, and you begin to see it. That's what you are seeing. So there, when you view it, you're going to see the anterior cranial fossa, the middle cranial fossa, and the posterior cranial fossa. All these fossae, the features, we'll discuss them in other videos. So you check out for the video on the cranial fossa. So now let's begin with the foramina. So between the frontal crest and the cubiform plate, or between the frontal crest and this crystal galley, there is a foramen here. This foramen is called the foramen caecum. So now, within this region, you're going to find another foramen. And this foramen is called the optic canal. Within this region, you're going to find a foramen like a ridge between the lesser wing of the sphenoid bone and the greater wing of the sphenoid bone. You have another one here. This foramen you see here now is called the superior orbital fissure. So now we are done with that. Then the next one you find is a round-like foramen. It is round in shape. Because it is round in shape, it is called the foramen rotundum. Then if you're lateral to it, you're going to find an oval-shaped foramen. Look at the foramen rotundum here. You find the oval-shaped foramen. This oval-shaped foramen is called Foramen Ovale. So now, lateral to the foramen ovale, you're going to find a very small foramen. And this foramen is called the foramen spinosum. Then within this region, you're going to find another foramen. It is usually between the junction of the temporal bone and the occipital bone. That foramen between the junction of the temporal bone and the occipital bone, there's a foramen there called the foramen lacerum. So now, let's assume this is your ears now. This is one of your ears, because this is the region where your ear is. This is one of your ears. And then you get the extension. Still have it here. So when it goes deep now, it's going to form another foramen. You know that on this region, the temporal region, you can see here now, if you should remove this external ear, there is an opening that leads into the ears itself. That opening is called the external acoustic meatus. So that opening goes deep into the ears, all the structures of the ears, the middle, and the trochlear systems, and other structure of the ears. Then it's going to come out here into the posterior cranial fossa as the internal acoustic meatus, or it's also called the internal auditory canal. So that is the one you find here. Then there is a very, very big foramen, the largest foramen, and very important, called the foramen magnum. The foramen magnum. Then, inferior to this, you're going to find another foramen called the jugular foramen, and then very close to the foramen magnum, you're going to find the hypoglossal canal. So you're going to find the hypoglossal canal close to the foramen magnum. So now these are the foramens that you find in the base of the neurocranium. So now what are they? We have the foramen caecum, we have the superior orbital fissure, we have the optic canal, we have the foramen rotundum, we have the foramen ovale, we have the foramen spinosum, we have the foramen lacerum, we have the internal acoustic meatus or the internal auditory canal. Then this is called the jugular foramen. We have the hypoglossal canal, and the largest foramen is foramen magnum. So the same structure you find there is the same structure you find here. So now, what are the structures that pass through each of these canals? So just stay with me for these few minutes and know all the structures that pass through each of the canals or each of the foramina, each of the foramen. So now let's begin. For this one, let's use red and the black pen. Black. For this, the foramen caecum. The structures that pass through the foramen caecum is the hemisphere, vein. That is the structure that passes through the foramen caecum, the hemisphere vein. So that is that for the foramen caecum. We move on to the next one. Within this region, there are three sets of foramens that can be found here. You can find the anterior ethmoidal foramen, you find the posterior ethmoidal foramen, and then the olfactory canal of olfactory foramen or olfactory foramina, because there are up to 15 of them, about 15 of them. So when we talk about one, it's called foramen, and when they are more than 1, 2 and above, you call it the foramina. So now, here now, let's assume this is the anterior ethmoidal. Okay, let's assume it's the anterior ethmoidal foramen. This is not the name of the structure. There's one structure here. One of the structures is anterior ethmoidal foramen, and the structure that passes through it is corresponding with the name, the anterior ethmoidal nerve. When we'll be discussing the trigeminal nerve, you will notice that this anterior ethmoidal nerve is a branch of the trigeminal nerve. We'll discuss that when we are discussing the trigeminal system. So now from there to, you're going to find the posterior ethmoidal foramen. Posterior ethmoidal foramen. And what structure passes it is corresponding to the name. The structure passing through it is the posterior ethmoidal nerve. So these are the two out of the three that you can find in the cruciform plate. So we have the anterior ethmoidal foramen, and structure that passes through it is the anterior ethmoidal nerve. We have the posterior ethmoidal foramen, which you can find in the cruciform plate. It's the structure that passes through it is the posterior ethmoidal nerve. This posterior ethmoidal nerve and this anterior ethmoidal nerve, they are both branches of the trigeminal nerve. So we are done with this. We are going into because there are three. We have discussed just the two that are found in this cruciform plate. So we are going into the third one. So I will clean it up. If you really want to check it, you just pause the video and write the structures down. So I will clean it off here and we can discuss the other one. So within this cruciform plate, another very important foramen you can find there. Okay, let me make it this way, and you can see the other structures. Another foramen you can find here. There are about 15 of them, 10 to 15. That foraminas, they are called the olfactory foramina. But we marked just one, so it's foramen we call it. So we call it the what? The olfactory what? Foramen. So what structure pass through the olfactory foramen? The structures that pass through the olfactory foramen, we have the olfactory nerve. So this is the structure that pass through what? The olfactory foramen. So we are done with that. So now we are moving into the next foramen, the structure that pass through it. For this next foramen, it's called, as we said, the superior orbital fissure. So what structure pass through the superior orbital fissure? The structure that pass through the superior orbital fissure, let's name them. Number one structure, the first structure is called the abducens nerve. That is the first structure. The abducens nerve is also called the sixth cranial nerve. It is the sixth cranial nerve. That is the first structure that passed through, one of the structures that passed through. The second structure that passed through the superior orbital fissure is ophthalmic nerve. That is another structure that pass through the superior orbital fissure, and the ophthalmic nerve we pass through with each structure to divide into three branches. We have the lacrimal branch, we have the frontal branch, and we have the nasociliary branch. So this is the second structure, another structure that will pass through superior orbital fissure. Then now another structure that will pass through it is the sympathetic fibers will pass through, and they are passing through to supply the eyes. They are passing through to supply the structures of the eyes. Then we have the oculomotor nerve. The oculomotor nerve is the third cranial nerve. Is the third cranial nerve. So for you to know all the nerves and their other names, that is the different nerves, you can check out the other video. Check out the video on cranial nerves. Then you know all the nerves and the position of the central nervous system from which they exist. So but now I'm focusing on the cranial foramina and the structure that passes through them. So another structure that passes through it is we have the ophthalmic vein. Ophthalmic vein pass through it. Then finally we have the trochlear nerve. The trochlear nerve is the fourth cranial nerve. It is the fourth cranial nerve. So these are the structures that pass through the superior orbital fissure. We have the abducens nerve, which is the sixth cranial nerve, the ophthalmic nerve, which should divide into three branches: the lateral, the lacrimal branch, the frontal branch, and the nasociliary branch. Then we have the sympathetic fiber. We have the oculomotor nerve, which is the third cranial nerve, the ophthalmic vein, and the trochlear nerve. So these are the structures that pass through the superior orbital fissure. So now we're moving into the next structure, the optic canal. The optic canal. So what structure pass through the optic canal? The structures that pass through the optic canal, we have the optic nerve. The optic nerve is the second cranial nerve. The second cranial nerve. And the other structure that pass through it is the sympathetic fiber. And these fibers, they are going to supply, that's going to give innervation to the eyes. The sympathetic fiber and structures of the eyes. So there are two structures that pass through the optic canal, which are the optic nerve and the sympathetic nerve. So we are moving into the next foramen. The next foramen, which is what is it called? It is round shaped, so it's called the foramen rotundum. Foramen rotundum. The foramen rotundum. So the foramen rotundum, the structure that pass through the foramen rotundum, the maxillary nerve. We have the maxillary nerve, and the maxillary nerve is a branch of the trigeminal nerve. So the trigeminal nerve has three branches. So let me just describe that briefly so you understand what I'm saying. So where do I describe that? Okay, I will describe that here. If this should be the trigeminal nerve, the trigeminal nerve has the sensory part, and the motor part. The sensory part is divided into three. We have the ophthalmic branch, also called the ophthalmic nerve. We have the maxillary branch, also called the maxillary nerve, and we have the mandibular branch, also called the mandibular nerve. So in this foramen, one of the branch of trigeminal nerve existed. And what is the branch? This first branch, ophthalmic branch. So you can see it as, usually since ophthalmic nerve, it is the fifth cranial nerve. So the first branch will be written as fifth cranial nerve versus 1. I get it. So in case you see something like that, fifth cranial nerve versus 1, or you come and write it down here, fifth cranial nerve 1. Then the second, the maxillary nerve, you see it as fifth cranial nerve 2, and the mandibular branch, you see it as fifth cranial nerve 3. So here now the maxillary nerve, it will be written as this, CNV3. That is CNV2. CNV2. Because it's what? It is the second branch of the trigeminal nerve. So that's one structure you find passing through the foramen rotundum. The other structure you find is the emissary vein. So these are the structures that pass through the foramen rotundum. So we are moving into the foramen ovale now. So I think I should clean up this. You must have known this so I can get enough space to write the other one. Foramen ovale. So the one we're discussing now is this foramen ovale, the ovale-shaped foramen. There's one on the right, one on the left. So it's foramina ovale, foramina ovale. But we're discussing just one. So that's why we said it's called the foramen ovale. So now, what structures pass through it? The structures that pass through the foramen ovale. We have the mandibular nerve. And the mandibular nerve, we said it's a branch of the trigeminal nerve. What branch? It's a sensory nerve. You can see from that there are three nerves. And this motor part now and this sensory part, mandibular nerve, they are going to go together through this foramen ovale. So the trigeminal branch called mandibular nerve has both the sensory part and the motor part going through the foramen ovale. But other ones, the ophthalmic branch, the maxillary branch, they are all sensory parts. They are all sensory fibers. And those sensory fibers, they are going to pass through the structures we have discussed. The first one, ophthalmic, will pass through this. And the second one, maxillary, is going to pass through the foramen rotundum. So now for this foramen ovale, it's going to be the mandibular nerve. And the symbol for it is the third branch of the trigeminal nerve. So it's going to have both the sensory part and the motor part passing through this foramen ovale. So another structure that will pass through it is the accessory. Accessory nerve. That's the last structure that will pass through it. And that structure that will pass through it is the lesser petrosal nerve. When we'll be discussing each of the cranial nerves, you will notice that this lesser petrosal nerve is a branch of a nerve, one of the cranial nerves called the glossopharyngeal nerve. So this lesser petrosal nerve is a branch of glossopharyngeal nerve. So that is the structure passing, and the last structure passing through is the emissary vein. So these are the structures passing through the foramen ovale. We have the mandibular nerve, the third branch of trigeminal nerve. We have the accessory nerve. We have the lesser petrosal nerve. We have the glossopharyngeal nerve and the emissary vein. So these are the structures passing through the foramen ovale. So now we are going into the next foramen, the foramen spinosum. What structures pass through the foramen spinosum? The structures that pass through the foramen spinosum. What structures pass through foramen spinosum? The structures that pass through are, we have the meningeal artery. It's one of the structures that pass through the foramen spinosum. The other structure that pass through is the middle meningeal branch. Middle meningeal branch of the mandibular nerve. Mandibular nerve divides into other branches, and one of them is the middle meningeal branch. And that middle meningeal branch, after dividing from the mandibular nerve, is going to pass through this foramen spinosum. We are going to discuss the parts in which each of these the cranial nerves divide and the branches they form, and how these branches, all these nerves we are mentioning, how they will then pass through the foramen, all these foramen we are discussing, how they pass through, and then they supply other organs of the body like the eyes. They supply, for example, the mucosa of the mouth and other structures. We'll discuss those ones in full detail. So now we have the meningeal artery, the middle meningeal branch of mandibular nerve. So these are the two structures that pass through the foramen spinosum. So now the next foramen is this, the foramen lacerum. It's at the junction between the temporal bone, this is the temporal bone, and the occipital bone. The temporal bone, the junction of the temporal bone and the occipital bone. So what structures pass through the lacerum? There's only one structure that passes through it, and that structure is the deeper, is the deep petrosal nerve. The deep petrosal nerve. So this is the structure that passes through the foramen lacerum. So now we're moving into the other ones. So I've discussed this foramen. We have discussed the foramina in the anterior cranial fossa, the foramina in the posterior cranial fossa. We are moving into the foramina in the posterior cranial fossa. We have discussed the one in the anterior cranial fossa, the one in the middle cranial fossa. We are going into the foramina in the posterior cranial fossa. So one of them is this, called the internal acoustic meatus or the internal auditory canal. So what structures pass through it? What structures pass through it? One of the structures that pass through the internal auditory canal or the internal acoustic meatus, one of the structures is the facial nerve. The facial nerve. And the facial nerve is the seventh cranial nerve. The seventh cranial nerve. So another structure that passes through it is the vestibulocondylar nerve. Vestibulocondylar nerve. And vestibulocondylar nerve is the eighth cranial nerve. So these are the two structures that pass through the internal acoustic meatus or the internal auditory canal. We have the facial nerve and the vestibulocondylar nerve. The next structure or the next foramina now is this, the jugular foramina. What structures pass through it? The structure that pass through the jugular foramen, because it's one, if it is two, is the jugular foramina, but we are concerned with one now, we are discussing just one. The jugular foramen, the structure that pass through it, they are, we have the glossopharyngeal nerve. And the glossopharyngeal nerve is the ninth cranial nerve. we have the vagus nerve. It's a very popular nerve, which is the 10th cranial nerve, which is the 10th cranial nerve. Then we have the accessory nerve. The accessory nerve is the 11th cranial nerve. So these are the structures that pass through the jugular foramen. So for this one now, this second to the last, called the hypoglossal canal. The structure that passes through it is corresponding to its name. And what is the structure? The structure is the hypoglossal nerve. The hypoglossal nerve. That is the structure passing through the hypoglossal canal. So now we are going to discuss we'll start the structure that pass through the last foramen, the biggest one, the foramen magnum. The foramen magnum. The foramen magnum. So what structure? The foramen magnum is divided into two parts. We have the anterior compartment and the posterior compartment. The anterior compartment is usually smaller than the posterior compartment, and the anterior compartment is usually tendinous. Structures that pass through it are usually tendons, connective tissues. So one of the structures that pass through this part, the anterior compartment, is the apical ligament. The apical ligament. Another structure that passes through it is the membrana tectoria. So we have the apical ligament, the membrana tectoria, and finally the cruciate ligament. So these are the structures that pass through the anterior compartment of the foramen magnum: the apical ligament, the membrana tectoria, and the cruciate ligament. For the posterior compartment, the structure that pass through it is usually the structures of the brainstem. And what are the structures? We have the pons, we have the medulla, and the cerebellum located in that part. The structures passing through this. So one of the structures is the pons, and that structure is the medulla of the brainstem and the cerebellum. So these are the structures that pass